Commander Allison Murphy stared at the message on her screen. She read it once, twice, and then a third time. The words remained the same. The Galactic Council had just declared war on humanity. All 327 species that made up the council had signed the declaration. Their reason: humans were too unpredictable and evolving too fast. Murphy took a sip of her coffee. It had gone cold. She should feel scared, she thought. Instead, she felt oddly calm. "Have you seen this?" Major Frank Daniels walked into her office without knocking. His face showed more annoyance than fear. "Just reading it now," Murphy said. "Seems they finally made up their minds." Daniels dropped into the chair across from her desk. Space Station. Liberty continued its quiet hum around them. Through the window, Earth looked peaceful, a blue marble hanging in the darkness. "We knew this was coming," Daniels said. "The diplomats are running around like scared chickens, though." Murphy nodded. "Let them run. We've been preparing for this day for 15 years. The first contact with alien life had happened 50 years ago. A Viridian scout ship had entered Earth's solar system. Humans had still been celebrating the completion of their first Mars colony. The Viridians, tall blue beings with 4 arms, had been surprised to find humans so far from Earth. They had been even more surprised when humans invited them to share a meal, rather than shooting at them. "Remember when Ambassador Cole told us what the Viridians really thought of us?" Murphy asked. Daniels laughed. "That we were adorably primitive but unsettlingly quick learners?" "Exactly." Murphy stood up and walked to the window. "In 50 years we've caught up to what took them 5,000. No wonder they're scared." The Galactic Council had welcomed Earth with open arms at first. Humans were the new, exciting species. They traded technology and knowledge. But then human innovation began to accelerate. Earth ships started to appear with improvements the aliens hadn't thought of. Human medicine began to solve problems that had troubled Council species for generations. "President Whitaker is about to address Earth," Daniels said, checking his tablet. "Want to watch?" Murphy nodded, and Daniels turned on the screen on the wall. President Samantha Whitaker stood at a podium. Her gray suit perfectly pressed, her face serious but not frightened. "Citizens of Earth and our colonies," she began. "1 hour ago I received a formal declaration of war from the Galactic Council." Murphy watched the president's face. Whitaker had been a military officer before entering politics. She understood what was coming. "We hope for peace," Whitaker continued. "But we prepared for war. Since our first contact with the Viridians 50 years ago, humanity has known that we are not alone in this vast universe. We have also known that not all who sail the stars would welcome our arrival." Daniels made a small noise of approval. "She's good." "For the past 15 years, while we built schools and hospitals with our alien friends, we also built shields and ships. While we shared meals with them, we also trained soldiers. Not because we wanted conflict, but because we understood it might find us anyway." Murphy remembered the day 15 years ago when intelligence had first suggested the Council was becoming nervous about human advancement. That same day, the secret military buildup had begun. Not obvious enough to provoke the very conflict they feared, but thorough enough to be ready. "To the citizens of Earth, your daily lives will continue unchanged for now. To our brave men and women in the United Earth Defense Force, the plans we have long prepared will now begin. To the Galactic Council, we regret that you have chosen this path, but we will walk it without fear." The president's face showed no anger, just determination. "We hoped for peace, but we prepared for war. And we are very, very prepared." The screen went dark. Murphy turned to Daniels. "Send the signal to activate Project Ouroboros. All phases." Daniels nodded and tapped on his tablet. "Signal sent. All commanders are acknowledging." Murphy sat back, down at her desk. "In bases across Earth, on the Moon, on Mars, Europa, Titan, and a dozen other locations throughout the solar system, military personnel were opening sealed orders and beginning their assigned tasks. None of them knew the complete plan. That was deliberate. Even if the Council had spies, they would only see fragments. What do you think they expect us to do? Daniels asked. Murphy smiled. They expect panic. They expect us to rush our ships to defend Earth. They expect us to beg for negotiations from a position of weakness. And instead? Instead, we do nothing obvious at all. Murphy pulled up a new screen on her computer. How are the civilian channels looking? Daniels checked his tablet again. Normal traffic, weather reports, entertainment streams, stock market updates, exactly as planned. Good. Murphy nodded. Let them wonder why we aren't reacting. Let them get nervous. The plan had been developed years ago. If war came, Earth would appear to carry on as normal. No panic, no obvious military mobilization. Let the Council think. Their declaration had been received with indifference. Meanwhile, beneath the surface of normal life, humanity would prepare its response. Dr. Eric Russell reports that the quantum communication system is fully operational, Daniels said. All military units can now communicate without the Council detecting any signals. Murphy nodded. And Diane Phillips on Europa? Mining operations. Continue as normal, but the special materials are being diverted to the production facilities. Outside the window, Earth continued its slow rotation. Clouds swirled over the Pacific Ocean. Somewhere down there, millions of people were just learning that their planet was at war. But they would go to work tomorrow. They would take their children to school. They would buy groceries and watch movies. And in hidden facilities around the solar system, humanity's response was taking shape. Not a panicked defense, but a carefully planned strategy that had been in development for 15 years. They think they know us, Murphy said, looking at Earth. That's their first mistake. Daniels smiled. And their last? Maybe. Murphy turned, back to her screen. Or maybe they'll learn something about us they never expected. What's that? That humans don't just fight wars, Murphy said. We solve them. The first Council ships would enter the solar system within 2 weeks. They would expect to find a panicked human fleet rushing to defend Earth. Instead, they would find nothing obvious at all. And that would confuse them. Confusion was the first step in humanity's plan. Send word to Captain Gregory Miller, Murphy said. Tell him to keep the fleet hidden in the Oort cloud until they receive my direct order. Yes, Commander. Murphy looked once more at the war declaration on her screen. Then she closed it and opened the actual defense plans. Now, she said, we show them why humanity remains unfazed. 2 weeks passed after the war declaration. Admiral Zortek of the Galactic Council stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Righteous Judgment. The massive ship led a fleet of 500 vessels toward the Sol system. His gray skin reflected the blue light of the ship's controls as he studied the reports before him. We are approaching the outer boundary of the human solar system, Admiral, his second-in-command reported. Zortek nodded. And our scouts report no defensive fleet? None, sir. No military activity detected at all. This troubled the Admiral. The Council had studied humans for decades. They were known to be protective of their homeworld. The declaration of war should have triggered massive defensive preparations, yet their scouts reported nothing unusual. Human communications continued as normal. Civilian traffic between Earth and its colonies proceeded without interruption. It makes no sense, Zortek muttered. Order the fleet to advance with caution. This may be a trap. On Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon, Diane Phillips woke to the sound of her alarm. She yawned and stretched before climbing out of bed in her small quarters. Through her window, she could see the massive mining equipment moving across Europa's frozen surface. The machines collected water ice, but more importantly, they harvested the rare materials hidden beneath. Phillips showered, dressed, and made her way to the control center. Workers nodded to her as she passed. Everyone knew about the war declaration, but no one seemed particularly worried. Morning report? Phillips asked as she entered the control center. Her assistant handed her a tablet. Production is up 12%. The new extraction point is richer than we expected. Phillips smiled. Good. Increase the work shifts. I want production up by another 15% by the end of the week. What the council didn't know was that the mining operation was actually producing critical materials for quantum weapons. Every chunk of special ice they pulled from Europa's depths brought humanity's defense capabilities higher. Back on Earth, Dr. Eric Russell worked in his underground laboratory. The facility was buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. 50 scientists and engineers worked around him, each focused on their own tasks. Together, they were completing the most important scientific project in human history. System test complete, a young engineer called out. Quantum entanglement stable at 99.8%. Russell nodded with satisfaction. His life's work was finally ready. Begin the distribution phase, he ordered. I'll inform Deputy Secretary Johnson. In Washington, D.C., Deputy Defense Secretary Rick Johnson sat in a meeting with the CEOs of America's top technology companies. The room was secure, with no electronic devices allowed inside. The quantum communication system is ready, Johnson informed them. We need to integrate it into all civilian networks without alerting the council observers. The CEO of Global Communications nodded. We've been preparing for this. We can implement the switch without any visible change to our broadcast patterns. Johnson turned to the head of Stellar Manufacturing. How soon can we convert your factories to produce the special components? We've had the hidden equipment in place for 3 years, the woman replied. We can begin full production within 48 hours. The council observers won't see anything different from outside. In space, between Mars and Jupiter, a council scout ship detected an unusual vessel. The ship's commander ordered his weapons powered up. According to council intelligence, all human military vessels should be easily identifiable. This ship matched no known configuration. Unidentified vessel. This is Council Scout Enforcer 6, the commander broadcast. Identify yourself immediately. The response came quickly. This is the Paradise Journey, a civilian cruise liner. We are carrying 200 tourists on a scenic tour of the asteroid belt. The council commander frowned. Their intelligence said human civilian ships were lightly built and unarmed. This vessel had an unusual hull material their sensors couldn't properly analyze. You will power down and prepare for boarding inspection, the commander ordered. On the bridge of the Paradise Journey, Captain Laura Bennett sighed. Well, it was bound to happen eventually. Everyone to your positions. The cruise ship had indeed been carrying tourists when the war was declared. Rather than cancel their journey, the company had continued as planned. The passengers had been briefed and were surprisingly calm about the situation. What the council ship didn't know was that the Paradise Journey, like all major human vessels for the past decade, had been built with military-grade materials, disguised to look like standard civilian construction. They're targeting us, Bennett's first officer reported. Let them fire first, Bennett ordered. Those are our instructions. In his hidden office beneath the Pentagon, General Alan Wright watched the situation unfold through the quantum communication system. He could see everything happening near the Paradise Journey in real time, without any signals the council could detect. They're going to fire on a civilian vessel, he said to his staff. Record everything, this will be useful later. The council scout ship fired a warning shot that passed close to the cruise liner. The Paradise Journey made no move to flee or fight back. Now boarding inspection team, the council commander ordered. A small shuttle launched from his ship. Captain Bennett smiled. Deploy the shields, but only around the boarding area. Let's show them just a sample. As the council shuttle approached, a small section of the cruise ship shimmered. The shuttle bounced off an invisible barrier, its engines sputtering. On his flagship, Admiral Zortek received the urgent message from the scout ship. Human civilian vessel deployed advanced shielding technology. Our intelligence is flawed. Zortek felt the first stirrings of real concern. If human civilian ships had such capabilities, what else had the council underestimated? In Washington, President Whitaker received the report about the encounter. So it begins, she said to her advisors. The council is discovering that we're not what they expected. On Space Station Liberty, Commander Murphy watched the data coming in from across the solar system. Human forces remained hidden. Council ships continued their cautious advance. The plan was working perfectly. They still haven't found any of our military assets, Daniels reported. Murphy nodded. They won't. Not until we want them to. How's Captain Miller and the fleet? Still hidden in the Oort cloud. The Council ships have passed right by several of our vessels without detecting them. The quantum entanglement technology that Dr. Russell had perfected didn't just allow for undetectable communication, it also allowed human ships to partially exist in another dimensional state, making them nearly invisible to standard sensors. We should thank the Council, really, Murphy said. Thank them? Daniels looked confused. For underestimating us. For thinking we would react like every other species they've encountered. Murphy stood up and walked to the window. Earth shone blue and peaceful below, for giving us the perfect opportunity to show them exactly who we are. Daniels smiled. And who are we, Commander? Murphy turned to face him. We're the species that prepares for the worst while hoping for the best. We're the people who build shields while extending a hand in friendship. And now we're the civilization that will teach the Galactic Council a lesson they'll never forget. As the Council fleet moved deeper into the solar system, they remained unaware that they were being watched by hundreds of hidden human sensors. They didn't know that Captain Miller's fleet was maneuvering into position behind them. They couldn't detect the quantum shield network that was ready to activate around Earth and every human colony. They had declared war on humanity, expecting fear and chaos. Instead, they found a calm, prepared civilization that was about to show the galaxy exactly why humans remained unfazed by their threats. Dr. Eric Russell stood in the center of his laboratory, surrounded by screens showing data from across the solar system. His team of scientists worked quietly at their stations. After 20 years of research, their quantum entanglement system was fully operational. Council fleet is approaching Mars orbit, a young scientist reported. Still no sign they've detected any of our military assets. Russell nodded. The Council ships had been in the solar system for 3 days now, moving cautiously toward Earth. They were clearly confused by the lack of visible defenses. Time to show them a small sample of what we can do, Russell said. He pressed his palm against a scanner, then entered a 12-digit code. Activating Phase 1 of the planetary shield. Around Earth, hundreds of small satellites that had appeared to be ordinary communication relays suddenly changed their energy signatures. A thin, barely visible field began to form around the planet. It wasn't the full shield, just enough to be detected by Council sensors. On the bridge of the Righteous Judgment, Admiral Zortek received the urgent alert. Energy field detected around Earth, his science officer reported. It appears to be some kind of defensive shield, but like nothing in our records. Zortek frowned. Can our weapons penetrate it? The science officer looked troubled. Unknown, Admiral. The energy signature doesn't match any known shielding technology. It seems to be partially phased into another dimension. This was not what the Council had expected. Human technology should be at least a century away from such capabilities. The Council's declaration of war had been based on the assumption that humans were advancing too quickly, but they had clearly underestimated just how far humans had already gone. Launch a test missile, Zortek ordered. Low yield. Let's see what this shield can withstand. The missile streaked toward Earth, a flash of light against the blackness of space. When it reached the shield, something unexpected happened. Instead of exploding against the barrier or penetrating it, the missile simply vanished. Where did it go? Zortek demanded. His science officer stared at the readings in disbelief. It appears to have been transported. We're detecting its energy signature near Jupiter. In his hidden base beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Russell smiled at the data. The quantum displacement field works perfectly. Anything that touches the shield can be relocated anywhere we choose. Near Jupiter, Diane Phillips received an alert at her mining station. Energy signature detected from transported Council weapon, her system reported. Containment successful. Phillips nodded with satisfaction. The missile had been redirected into a special containment field where it could be studied. Every piece of Council technology they could capture provided more information about their enemy. Far out in the Oort cloud, at the very edge of the solar system, Captain Gregory Miller stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance. The ship was the pride of humanity's hidden fleet, a vessel that could travel using quantum jumps rather than conventional drives. "All ships report ready, Captain," his first officer said. Miller nodded. "Still no sign the Council has detected us?" "None, sir. Their sensors pass right over us. The quantum cloaking is working perfectly." Miller studied the tactical display. 100 human warships waited in perfect formation, completely invisible to standard detection methods. They had been built in secret over the past 15 years, hidden in asteroid bases and concealed shipyards throughout the solar system. "Maintain position," Miller ordered. "We'll move when Commander Murphy gives the signal." On Space Station Liberty, Commander Murphy received reports from across the solar system. Every piece of the plan was falling into place. "Council spy detected at the Singapore spaceport," Major Daniels reported. Murphy smiled. "Right on schedule. Is Agent Cooper in position?" "Yes, Commander, she's ready to feed them exactly the information we want them to have." The Council spy, an alien named Zell-Nor, was disguised as a human businessman. He moved through the busy spaceport, listening for useful information. What he didn't know was that humans had identified him months ago. A woman sat down at the bar next to him. "Shipping delays again," she complained loudly. "Ever since that war declaration, nothing. Arrives on time." Zell-Nor pretended to be interested in his drink while listening carefully. "I heard they're evacuating the moon base," the man on the other side said. "Moving everyone to the Mars colony for safety." This was exactly the kind of information Zell-Nor needed. He made a mental note to report it to his superiors. He didn't realize that the woman was Agent Linda Cooper, and every word spoken near him was carefully scripted misinformation. In the White House Situation Room, President Whitaker reviewed the latest intelligence reports. "The Council is still trying to understand our shield technology?" "Yes, Madam President," the Secretary of Defense confirmed. "They've launched 3 more test weapons. We've transported each one to different research facilities for study." Whitaker nodded. "And they still haven't detected our fleet?" "No. Captain Miller reports all ships remain undetected." "Good." Whitaker studied the star map on the wall. "The Council expects us to be frightened, to be begging for peace talks by now. Their entire strategy depends on us behaving like every other species they've encountered." On board the Righteous Judgment, Admiral Zortek was growing increasingly concerned. His fleet had been in the human solar system for nearly a week, and still no human military vessels had appeared to challenge them. The shield around Earth was like nothing the Council had ever seen, and most disturbing of all, human civilian activities continued almost normally. "Latest intelligence report from our agent on Earth," his communications officer said, handing him a data pad. Zortek read the report and frowned. "They're evacuating their moon base? That makes no sense. Why only the moon and not the Mars colony?" His second-in-command shook his head. "Humans are behaving unlike any species we've encountered, Admiral. They seem almost unconcerned by our presence." In his laboratory, Dr. Russell received a communication from Commander Murphy. "The Council is sufficiently confused," Murphy said. "Time for the next phase. Activate the full shield network." Russell nodded. "With pleasure, Commander." He entered a series of commands into his system. Across the solar system, quantum shields shimmered into existence, not just around Earth, but Mars, Venus, the Moon, Europa, Titan, and every human colony and major installation. Within seconds, every human settlement was protected by the same technology that had baffled the Council ships. On the mining station, on Europa, Diane Phillips watched as the shield engulfed her facility. "All personnel, Phase 2 is now active," she announced. "Begin converting all production to military grade." The machines on Europa's surface changed their patterns, now openly extracting the exotic materials needed for quantum weapons. With the shields in place, there was no need to hide their true purpose any longer. In Washington, Deputy Secretary Johnson spoke to the gathered business leaders. "The shields are up. Begin the conversion of all factories to defense production." Across Earth, manufacturing facilities that had been producing civilian goods smoothly transitioned to creating military equipment. The machinery had been designed for dual purposes from the beginning. What looked like car factories to Council observers now produced vehicle armor. Electronics plants began assembling weapon components. On Space Station Liberty, Commander Murphy received confirmation from all sectors. "The trap is set," she said to Major Daniels. "Send the signal to Captain Miller." Daniels nodded and transmitted the coded message through the quantum communication network. In the Oort cloud, Captain Miller received his orders. "All ships, prepare for quantum jump," he commanded. "Formation Alpha. 100 human warships prepared to reveal themselves, in a carefully planned pattern that would surround the Council fleet." After years of patience and preparation, humanity was ready to show its true strength. What the Galactic Council had failed to understand was that humanity had never been unprepared or unconcerned. They had simply been waiting for the right moment to reveal just how unfazed they truly were. Captain Gregory Miller stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance as his fleet prepared for the quantum jump. 100 ships, each more advanced than anything the Galactic Council had ever seen, waited for his command. "All ships report ready, Captain," his first officer said. Miller nodded. "Execute jump in 3, 2, 1. In an instant, the human fleet vanished from the Oort cloud. There was no flash of light, no energy signature, nothing that Council sensors could detect. One moment, the ships were hidden at the edge of the solar system. The next, they simply existed elsewhere. On the bridge of the Righteous Judgment, alarms blared. Admiral Zortek spun around as his tactical officer shouted in panic. "Multiple ships detected. They're all around us." The tactical display showed 100 human vessels that had appeared out of nowhere, surrounding the Council fleet. In a perfect sphere formation, there had been no warning, no approach, they had simply materialized. "Impossible," Zortek whispered. No known species had mastered such technology. "Open communication channel to their lead vessel." On the Defiance, Miller received the hail. "Council flagship is requesting communication, Captain." On screen, Miller ordered. Admiral Zortek's gray face appeared. He struggled to maintain his composure. "This is Admiral Zortek of the Galactic Council fleet. Identify yourself." Miller smiled. "Captain Gregory Miller of the United Earth Defense Force vessel Defiance. We've been watching you for some time, Admiral." "How did your ships appear without detection?" "Our sensors showed nothing." "Quantum displacement technology," Miller explained, though he knew the Admiral wouldn't understand. "We exist partially in another dimension until we choose to fully materialize in this one." On Earth, in the White House Situation Room, President Whitaker watched the exchange. "Time for Phase 3, she said to her advisors. "Contact Ambassador Cooper." Linda Cooper had completed her mission, feeding false information to the Council spy. Now she stood in a secure communication room, preparing to reach out to 17 different Council species. These were the species that intelligence had identified as having opposed the war declaration. "Broadcasting on all diplomatic channels," a technician told her. Cooper nodded. "Representatives of the Galactic Council, this is Ambassador Linda Cooper of Earth. While our military forces have revealed only a fraction of their capabilities, I extend an offer of peace to those Council members who opposed this unnecessary conflict." Her message would bypass the Council leadership, going directly to the governments of species who had been outvoted when war was declared. It was another part of humanity's careful plan: divide the Council from within. On Space Station, Liberty, Commander Murphy monitored the situation. "Any response from the Council fleet, Major Daniels?" "They're maintaining position, Commander. No aggressive moves yet. They appear to be assessing our capabilities." Murphy nodded. "And our shipyard strike teams?" "In position and awaiting your order." This was the most daring part of humanity's counteroffensive. While Captain Miller's fleet kept the Council forces occupied near Earth, 5 special teams had been dispatched to the Council's primary military shipyards. Not to destroy them, humans weren't interested in civilian casualties, but to disable them with surgical precision. "Give the order," Murphy said. Daniels transmitted the command through the quantum network. Across the galaxy, 5 human ships appeared without warning inside the main Council shipyards. These were the ghost ships, smaller vessels with enhanced quantum jumping capabilities. Before the shipyard defenses could react, the human teams deployed specialized devices that shut down the production systems without harming the civilian workers. On the Council homeworld, the Supreme Chancellor received 5 emergency messages simultaneously. All 5 of their primary shipyards had been neutralized in perfect coordination. No casualties were reported, but no new warships could be built. In his laboratory, Dr. Russell monitored the deployment of his newest creation. Thousands of small drones, each no bigger than a human hand, were being distributed throughout the solar system. The drones used quantum entanglement to remain connected to his control system. They could appear and disappear at will, making them impossible to track or destroy. Drone network at 60% coverage, a technician reported. Russell nodded. Good. Begin passive scanning of all Council vessels. The drones would gather detailed information about Council ship designs, weapons, and weaknesses, all without being detected. On Europa, Diane Phillips directed the loading of the first quantum weapons onto transport vessels. Unlike conventional weapons, these devices could target specific systems without destroying entire ships. They could disable engines, weapons, or communications while leaving life support untouched. First shipment ready for deployment, Phillips reported to Commander Murphy. Awaiting your orders. Distribute them to Captain Miller's fleet, Murphy replied. But hold on deployment. We want the Council to see we have them, but we don't want to use them unless absolutely necessary. In orbit around Earth, Admiral Zortek faced the most difficult decision of his career. His fleet was surrounded by human vessels that seemed to defy the laws of physics as the Council understood them. Reports were coming in about the shipyard strikes, and now his sensors detected new weapons being distributed to the human ships. Weapons with energy signatures unlike anything in Council records. Admiral, we're receiving multiple communications from Council member worlds, his communications officer reported. They're questioning our actions. Ambassador Cooper's message was working. Council unity was fracturing as member species realized they had severely underestimated humanity. On the Defiance, Captain Miller received a new message from Earth. Captain, President Whitaker wishes to address the Council fleet, patching her through now. The image of President Whitaker appeared on screens throughout the Council fleet. Her expression was calm and determined. Admiral Zortek, representatives of the Galactic Council. 3 weeks ago, you declared war on humanity, believing us unprepared and primitive. Today, you have seen only a fraction of our true capabilities. She paused, letting her words sink in. We have not destroyed your ships, though we could have. We have not targeted your homeworlds, though we know their locations. The shipyards we have disabled can be reactivated with no loss of life. This is not because we lack the ability to do more, but because humanity chooses restraint. On Council worlds across the galaxy, leaders watched in growing concern. The species they had dismissed as barely space-capable had outmaneuvered them at every turn. We offer you a choice, Whitaker continued. Continue this unnecessary war or meet us for peace talks on neutral ground. The location we propose is Jupiter's moon Ganymede. You have 24 hours to respond. The transmission ended. Admiral Zortek stared at the blank screen, then at the tactical display showing his surrounded fleet. For the first time in Council history, they had declared war on a species that was far more advanced than they had believed possible, and now that species was offering peace instead of destruction. On Earth, in cities and towns across the planet, humans continued their daily lives. They went to work, took their children to school, and enjoyed their evenings at home. The war that had been declared against them seemed distant and unimportant, because humanity had remained unfazed by the Council's threat. They had prepared for this day, and now they were showing the galaxy exactly why. The peace conference on Ganymede began 3 days after President Whitaker's offer. Jupiter loomed large in the sky above the dome where humans and Council representatives gathered. The massive gas giant seemed to watch over the proceedings like a silent witness. Admiral Zortek led the Council delegation. After seeing humanity's capabilities firsthand, The Council had quickly accepted the peace offer. The Admiral had never experienced such a rapid shift in power. In all previous conflicts, the Council's superior numbers had guaranteed victory. This time was different. President Whitaker entered the conference room with a small team. Commander Murphy, Dr. Russell, Captain Miller, and Ambassador Cooper accompanied her. They carried no visible weapons and wore simple diplomatic attire. They did not look like representatives of a civilization that had just outmaneuvered the most powerful force in the galaxy. Admiral Zortek, Whitaker said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. Thank you for accepting our invitation. The Admiral hesitated, then took her hand awkwardly. You have given us little choice, Madam President. Your technology is unexpected. Whitaker smiled. Please sit. We have much to discuss. As they took their places around the large table, representatives from 17 Council species joined virtually. These were the species that had opposed the war declaration and had responded to Ambassador Cooper's outreach. Before we begin formal peace talks, Whitaker said, I believe we should address why the Council declared war in the first place. Zortek shifted uncomfortably. The Council determined that humanity was advancing too rapidly and unpredictably to be allowed continued expansion. You feared us, Whitaker said simply. Yes, the Admiral admitted. Your species progressed from basic space travel to technologies beyond our understanding in just 50 years. No other species has developed so quickly. Whitaker nodded. And yet your fear was misplaced. We have had many opportunities to destroy your fleet in the past weeks. We chose not to. The Admiral had no response to this. It was true. The human ships had surrounded his fleet, but had fired no weapons. The shipyard strikes had disabled their facilities without a single casualty. The Council believed we were a threat because we were different, Whitaker continued. Now I will show you why we are different, and why that difference should inspire cooperation rather than fear. She nodded to Dr. Russell, who activated a holographic display in the center of the table. It showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy, with a strange energy pattern approaching from outside. This is why humanity developed so rapidly, Russell explained. 50 years ago, when we made first contact with the Viridians, we also detected this. The Council representatives leaned forward, studying the display with confusion. What is it? Zortek asked. We don't know exactly, Russell said, but our quantum sensors detect a massive entity or collective approaching our galaxy. Its energy signature suggests it consumes stars. At its current speed, it will reach the outer edge of Council space within 30 years. Silence fell over the room. The representatives of the 17 watching species exchanged worried glances. You detected this 50 years ago? One of them finally asked. How? Our sensors show nothing. Because you're looking with conventional technology, Russell explained. This entity exists partially in another dimension. It can only be detected with quantum entanglement sensors. This is why we've been preparing, Whitaker said. Not for war with the Council, but for something far worse. We call it Project Ouroboros, our plan to defend not just Earth, but the entire galaxy. Zortek looked stunned. You've been building defenses against this thing, not against us? Commander Murphy spoke for the first time. The quantum shields, the displacement technology, the ghost ships, all designed to protect against an enemy that exists beyond normal space-time. But why didn't you tell the Council about this threat? Zortek demanded. Ambassador Cooper smiled sadly. We tried. 3 times in the past 20 years, our ambassadors presented evidence to the Council. Each time, we were dismissed as trying to justify our rapid military buildup. Zortek looked down, unable to meet their eyes. He remembered those presentations now, reports that had been ridiculed and filed away. So instead, Captain Miller said, we prepared on our own. We developed the technologies we would need. We built our defenses. And we hoped that one day the Council would see we aren't a threat, but potential allies against something far worse. President. Whitaker stood up. And now that day has come, though not as we had hoped. You declared war, and we showed you our capabilities. Now I offer you something unexpected. Partnership. She nodded to Dr. Russell again. The hologram changed to show technical specifications for quantum entanglement sensors. These are the plans for the basic sensors that can detect the approaching entity, Russell said. Consider them a gesture of good faith. Your scientists will need to adapt them to your own technology, but they will work. The council representatives stared in disbelief. Humanity was offering advanced technology freely even after being attacked. Why would you share this with us? Zortek asked. After we declared war? Because the threat doesn't care about our differences, Whitaker said, simply. If that entity reaches our galaxy, all of us, humans and council species alike, will face extinction. We need each other to survive. For the next several hours, the humans outlined their proposal. Not just peace, but a working alliance. Shared technology, combined defense systems, cooperative research. Project Ouroboros would become a multi-species effort. A council scientist, attending virtually, spoke directly to Dr. Russell. Your quantum theories violate several principles we thought were absolute laws of physics. Russell smiled. Perhaps we should work together to write new laws. By the end of the day, a framework for peace had been established. The council would withdraw its declaration of war. Human representatives would join the council as full members, not subject species. And most importantly, joint preparations would begin immediately for the greater threat approaching from beyond the galaxy. The formal meetings ended, Admiral Zortek approached Commander Murphy. Your military was ready for us, he said. You could have destroyed my fleet entirely. Murphy nodded. We could have, but that's not who we are. Then who are you? The Admiral asked. In all my years, I've never encountered a species that prepares so thoroughly for war while desiring peace so deeply. Murphy looked out the dome window at Jupiter swirling in the blackness of space. We're humans. We hope for the best while preparing for the worst. We build shields with one hand and extend the other in friendship. We remained unfazed by your war declaration, not because we were unafraid, but because we were ready. 1 month later on Earth, life continued much as it had before. People went to work, children attended school, and the daily news rarely mentioned the brief war. But in space, things had changed dramatically. Human and council ships now trained together. Dr. Russell worked alongside alien scientists to improve the quantum detection network. Diane Phillips's mining operation on Europa had expanded, with council engineers learning the extraction techniques for the exotic materials needed for quantum technology. And far beyond the solar system, at the very edge of council space, a joint fleet of human and alien vessels prepared the first line of defense against the approaching entity. Captain Miller stood on the bridge of the Defiance, now accompanied by Admiral Zortek. Do you think we can stop it? The Admiral asked. Miller looked at the stars before them. I don't know, but I do know we have a better chance together than apart. The Galactic Council had declared war, but humanity had remained unfazed. And in doing so, they had forged an alliance that might just save the galaxy.